it was 6 months and 3 weeks in and still had nothing on the table, right? So then the conversation was, okay, I've put in a lot of effort, I've put in a lot of time. I had felt very positive about a lot of conversations and nothing has closed and nothing has come to fruition. Why?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Biz Dev Podcast, the podcast about developing your business. I'm David Baxter, your host, joined per usual by Gary Voigt. He's getting a little bushy around the edges there, looking a little old.
Yeah, need a
Letting that
little
gray
trim.
shine. Need a little trim. Yeah, there we go. I missed a spot, but you can't see it because the camera's not good enough, so I'm just going to stay over here. More important,
I
we are
think you
joined.
purposely missed the spot.
Yes, I just want one little flappy set of 5 hairs that just flap around on the breeze. It's the only way I can feel connected. When I roll my window down and my 4 hairs fly through the air. More importantly, we are joined by Joe McIntyre, who is the founder of 1240. Welcome, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, David and Gary. Thank you very much for having me on. I think the top of my head works like Gary's beard and my facial hair works like your hair based on the way you explained it, David. Try to goes up. So
Hey,
the 4 hairs don't blow in the breeze as I go down the road.
I
Best of both
find
worlds.
that the people who have the most bushy beards are often the baldest. I don't know if that's 100%, but Gary's got a pretty decent beard and he has hair. So he's just a freak. But most of them, that's what I find. You get
I
those
would
I'm just
claim-
mid-transition.
All right. I don't think my wife who's listening to this podcast is tired of the hair talk. So tell me a little bit about your business.
Yeah, my business is me. I am an independent consultant and I focus on improving businesses for companies who are in any aspect of fulfillment, distribution, operations, and that can be on the shipper side or on the provider side, but mostly where the core of my business, my expertise comes on the fulfillment provider side, and less on how do we do processes more effectively, but more on how do we grow our business effectively to be most competitive and elevate our customers. And with that, they elevate their own companies and I get to see a big smile on their face and then go on and help the next person who was much braver than me, putting their money, their time, and their sweat and tears on the line than I did.
So do you consider yourself a freelancer or just your first employee?
That's a great question. 18 months ago when I started this, I would have considered myself a freelancer. Right now, I'm still a freelancer, but I think I've evolved to think of my first employee. I just don't know when number 2 is going to come yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
So take me through that transition. What made you go from I'm cool with being a freelancer to now I think I want to do a company?
A couple different things. When I went out on my own, it was intentional and by design, but not on the timeline I thought I was going to do it. And so I hadn't fully baked out what I was doing, why I wanted to do it, and what got me juiced. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. I fell into the trap of LinkedIn at the time of there's a lot of solopreneurs out there and you can do a lot of really great things. And it sounded awesome. And it has been. It's been great for me and what I've needed in my professional life, my personal life. But then I went on a contract when I was struggling to drum up some business and I went back and was more embedded in a team than I had intended to be. Realized I missed it, right? There are a lot of positives of being by yourself, but there's a lot of fun in having some people in your corner that you're working together with towards a goal. And I think with where my business has gone over the last 18 months and where I can see it going, it will be better with more people. And I will be able to double down on what I'm really good at if I can find people who want to do something similar to what I've done that are really good at some of the other aspects of it, right? There's a lot of stuff I underestimated when I went out on my own that I just didn't have background and skill set for. So I've learned a ton, but I think the biggest takeaway has been I learned that I'm not very good at it and it doesn't make me really happy. And that's always going to be a limiting factor for me. So how can I find someone else who thinks the same way, wants to solve the same things, is looking for the same thing in their journey as I am, but just has a separate skill set than I do? And how do we elevate each other? And that's something I didn't think about.
So those holes in your knowledge, were they things like businessy things like accounting and taxes and that kind of stuff? Or was it holes in knowledge of your industry?
Yes. So tactically, it was holes in the I knew I was never going to do my accounting myself. My dad's an
Sure.
accountant. I knew that was not a skill set I had, but selling my business. I don't have a demo to say, here is what my product does, right? I sit in front of you as the product, and that's even harder to sell because I need to convince somebody up front that they should entrust their business to me. And that's something where I know that I have the skills and the abilities to solve their problem, but I don't sign their check over to me at the end of the day. And I think that's something where it takes a lot of experience, it takes a lot of learning, it takes a lot of willingness to be vulnerable. All things I can do, but all things that take a lot longer than, okay, I have no paycheck coming in now and I got to go drum up business. I can do that in 3 months, right? That was an area that I underestimated. And I think there's people that are really good at it, that love doing it. And I'm not very good at it. I could be, but I don't love doing it. So that's going to be a lot of extra time and energy on my side to get myself to where I need to be. I think that's one. The flip side, tactically, I know areas of fulfillment. I know areas of running the business of fulfillment, owning the P&L very well. But I'm not an SME on like robotics. I'm not a subject matter expert on Section 321 so that you can have more margin coming in when you're shipping from outside of the country. There are people that are awesome at that. And yes, I have a network of people now that I can refer you to and hand you off to, but it would be really great to say, this person sitting right next to me, who I work with every day, is really good at this. And together we can come up with something really strong for you. So it's both.
So if I heard you correctly, you were saying you're not great at sales and you would like to bring on someone who's better at that. Did I mishear that, or is that accurate?
That's
You
accurate.
you can do it, but it's not a
of
thing.
what I was getting at. Yeah. I've bootstrapped everything, right? My outbound marketing is like, my sales pitch is me sharing my knowledge at industry events with people I come across on LinkedIn, the network I've built over time. And that's great to an extent, but that's also giving product away for free, which at the end of the day, I went on my own to do business, right? And so if I can find someone who is a little more honed, that would be a great thing for me. Is it something I can do myself? Yeah. Have I probably stunted my growth to this point? Financially, yes. From a personal development standpoint, absolutely not. I've learned more than I would have ever learned by going out and doing it on my own. So it's been an interesting experience.
Is your business, what's the right way of saying it? Do you have a product, or is it just advice consulting? Like literally your time to advise and make them better? Or do you, like, I go and you tell me about your project and I'm going to go build it, right? I disappear for a while and do my typey. Do you have any product like that?
No. And that's been the challenge on the first year, right? Because the challenge on the first year is, and you made the comment that I'm much younger than you, and I'm probably older than most people anticipate. But when I'm in an environment like this and I'm getting on the phone with somebody for the first time, I can be at a deficit because your natural reaction is, there's no way this person knows more than I do in this topic, which I'm not saying I know everything at all, but I have a lot more experience than people often think at first glance, right?
As old as Gary, if possible.
Especially in what I've taken, right? I spent most of my career with large corporations, and I'm trying to help bring that learning and all the failures and experience I got on someone else's dime to people who have gone and created a small, mid-sized scaling business out of their own hands, right? And being able to say to them, hey, I may not have been doing it for as long as you have, but I've been exposed to different things than you have been. And here is a way that you can think about something differently. And that's one of the challenges, I think, there, right? And it's fun for me. I think there's an education piece that is there, but that's a challenge and that's a hurdle to go through of, I don't have a product to sell, right? Like I can't say, hey, here's the template. Could I do that yet? Are there a lot of people out there that do that yet? Is that something that I've now added to my roadmap of what needs to happen in the next 6 to 12 months? Absolutely. But there's also something you can put a system and you can put a product in place, but you still need to, at least in the fulfillment world and the operations world, execute upon it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You've been doing this, you said, for 18 months. Now, what size businesses or companies do you find yourself working with? Is it like newer startups with small amount of people that aren't really concrete in any processes already? And also, do you have clients that maybe are a little bit bigger, but they've had a process they've been doing for years, and it's just kind of hard to break them of their bad habits to, more or less optimize their outcome from that?
It's both depending on which type of client it is, right? So on the brand side, it's typically that smaller startup that can't yet attract the expertise of somebody with an operations, a supply chain background, because there's a mismatch, right? What the level of expertise they need is either someone who is not willing to get their like hands really dug in again, and or is coming at too high of a cost, but they're not yet at a spot where they can hire someone full time or in a more senior role. So it's a lot of advisory work there, or some fractional stuff. But they're at a size where they really only need 10 hours a week of somebody to do some
Yeah.
things to make sure things are happening. On the fulfillment side, it's much larger. So it's what I would say people who are in the scaling phase of business, right? So they are large enough now that they can't be scrappy, right? It doesn't work. They need to be on real systems. They have to have real process in place, and they either have that and have had it for a long time and need to adapt, like you've talked about, or they've just taken that step, right? They just acquired another business, or one of their core customers has expanded, and so they've grown with them, and now they need to take the next step in growth. I would say that is on the fulfillment side, which is the core of my business. That is where I have the bread and butter. So it's people who are somewhere between $5 and $15 million a year in revenue. It's people who are doing 3, 4, 5 facilities and need to understand not how to run the operation within 4 walls of one building, but how do we run the operation across multiple facilities, right? And it's less about optimizing the process and more about now optimizing the business. Right? There's a lot more that comes into play for them when it's not on site in person every single day at one location where you can see and feel what's going on. And you now need to make sure that there's consistency across locations, consistency across this. And a lot of that is just resource, right? That's not so much that they don't know that they need it. It's that they need it and they need it quick, but they can't give up resources from the day to accomplish that. So how do they supplement that? And that's where I can come in and fill the gap.
Practically speaking, I sell soap and I got an e-commerce site.
Yeah.
When would I need someone like you? I'm selling too much soap now that I can't handle it. I need a warehouse. At what point am I calling someone like you in? When am I overwhelmed?
Yeah. For someone like that, what I would say the time to call is we are scaling. And it may not necessarily be that we're selling too much and we can, right? That's something that we can help with. But it's more going to be the decision. We have been fulfilling in-house because it hasn't been that much. But now we're large enough that's taking too much time away from our team. And so we need to figure out, what do we do next, right? And the answer may not be we're moving out to somewhere. The answer may be we can still do it in-house if we make these minor changes, right? Or it can be, we know we need to go somewhere. How can we do that most cost effectively? And for a shipper or someone, a brand, whoever's selling, a lot of the times at that point in their journey, they still are going to have a lot of tendencies that a startup's going to have, which I completely understand, right? Very conscious of cost, very reliant on people around them that are similar size, similar experience, that can lead them to an echo chamber about what fulfillment looks like. And so for me, it's helping them set their business up to be successful and find the right person to work with to be successful in that fulfillment. When you talk about e-commerce, challenge for a lot of e-commerce brands is they control every aspect of the customer experience up until the point of purchase. And at that point in time, when the customer, at the most important point, given them money to get the product, they lose control of what's happening, right? And they are fully dependent on the partners that they've partnered with. So if they have gone to a fulfillment provider who is not the right fit for them, right? Too big, doesn't do their niche, can't hit their customer, whatever it may be. There's a million different variables for that. But if they don't go to them, or if they go to them and are with them, the customer doesn't care, right? The customer doesn't care that Joe's 3PL didn't process the order because they didn't have 4 employees show up. And then they gave it to UPS and UPS like lost the package. And then when you paid for 3-day shipping, it shows up 10 days later. The customer's calling the brand about that, right? So setting up that piece is super important and making sure, hey, this is the best person according to Google. Is it the best person for me to be working with, right? Are they the right fit for my business? Do I want to be a big fish in a small pond? Do I want to be a small fish in a big pond? Do I care about it being a very good experience and peace of mind and I don't ever have to think about it, therefore I'm willing to pay a little bit extra money? Or do I care that it's the lowest price and I'll deal with me having to be on the phone with them every 15 minutes because they haven't processed an order, right? Those are a lot of things that smaller brands don't always think through because they haven't had that, right? And that's where I can bring a lot of expertise because I've been on both sides. I've been a shipper. I've searched for 3PL providers. I have left 3PL providers that haven't been the right fit for me. I've had 3PL providers tell us to find somebody else because we haven't been the right fit for them. So how do you navigate that to get the right cost of fulfillment is not necessarily an indicator of doing really well. It's if you have to fulfill the order twice because you got, maybe a better way of saying this is your cheapest option, not always your lowest cost option, right? If you go with somebody who is cheap, there is a chance you are going to rework everything. And when you rework everything, that is just lost margin on that product. And so yes, you save 10 cents a unit to pick, pack, and ship it, but they never picked and shipped it. So you gave it to someone for free on an expedited shipment. And now you actually just paid that person twice the cost of the product. And you've lost 3 units of sales versus losing 10 cents to go to a better, more reasonable option. Right?
Man,
And
that's offshoring in a nutshell right there, man.
What did you say?
That's offshoring in a nutshell right there, man. So
Exactly.
people argue all the time, hey, man, I could hire this guy over here. He's half your cost.
Yep.
Okay. And I'll tell them, I put on my little tinfoil hat. I'm like, here's your future. You're going to go with that person. It's going to take you twice as long. He's going to do half as good of a job, and you're going to be really mad. And you're going to call me a year later, and I'm still going to be the same price. And that's where you're going to be. Now, sometimes they don't call me because they're embarrassed, but it still happens, right? I mean, and there are successful stories of someone using that cheaper service.
Yes.
But that's the exception, not the rule, I find. And
or
so
it fit what their business was designed to be, right? It's just what it is, right? Like I was fortunate for one of the companies I work for to live in Germany for a while, and they have a saying, right? There's no bad weather. It's only bad clothing, right? The weather's only bad if you have the wrong clothes. It's the same thing, right? There really are no bad fulfillment providers. There are fulfillment providers that are dirt cheap, and you would look at the business and say, I don't understand how this works, but for whatever reason it does. And it works really well for people who need low cost, don't care if stuff goes missing. The product margin's really low. They just need someone to fulfill every so often. That's fine. You got to find the right fit for what you need. And unfortunately, that takes expertise, takes time. There is cost associated to it. And I'm going to paint with a broad brush for brands who are scaling, like the example you gave, this a soap company that's just taken off. Those are 3 things that are like in high demand and low supply for them because they're doing everything. The 3 people are doing everything. And that's where someone like myself, where there's a lot of other people who focus a lot more on the brand side than I do, can come in and can be a resource. And I think that's something that is becoming much more relevant. And I think probably in your space, David, right? The term fractional CPO, fractional CI, whatever it may be, is out there a lot. But then there's this connotation that you're getting this like C-suite level that's going to show up in a suit. And no, fractional could be any. I could be a fractional data entry frontline 8 hours.
It's also called part-time.
Exactly. How you want to pose it, and how you pose it also is who you're going to attract, right?
The fractional sounds so much more Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I should totally tell my daughter that who worked at Chick-fil-A that she is a fractional fast food worker.
It's
fractional customer experience expert.
There you go. Fractional Sunjoy maker.
A fractional site leader for customer experience. Put that on the resume. That's going to hit every algorithm. She'll have jobs in
person to person, face to face.
There you go.
Face to face, sales, and logistics operator.
Yeah, exactly.
When you
everything's a little bit of
too, when she holds the iPad.
Everything's a little bit of PR. But yeah, it's interesting. That's one piece there. But then the flip side of it, right? Like it's the same problem whether you're a fulfillment provider or a shipper. You have the same problem. You're just looking through it from opposite sides of the window pane, right? So if I'm talking about a fulfillment provider now, and a fulfillment provider is saying like, all I'm doing is attracting very tiny startups that I never know if they're going to send 1,000 in a week or 10,000 in a week, right? But I can't get to the next level of client, or that's who I want to service, but I'm having trouble doing it in a profitable manner. Now the flip side of that problem comes in and it's, okay, how do you set up your business to do that? Like you need to have some expectations for them. How do you turn bad clients that you currently have that don't fit what you're trying to do? Or how do you adjust your business to it? And that's where I come in on the other side, because that's where I've spent most of Yes, I've been on the shipper side and found fulfillment, but I've also spent the majority of my career in the four walls, operating, making sure that our operations are profitable, making sure that we're doing the go-to-market piece of the fulfillment operation more effectively. And a lot of what I see there is it's really good businesses that can lose focus at time and either do the business side really well, but can't do the operation, or do the operation extremely well, but don't understand the business side of it, right? And all of a sudden the profitability just disappears. And then at the end of the month, how did we only bring home 10 cents on every dollar that we brought in, right? That's not how it's modeled to be. So how do you start to bring that together and run it more effectively?
Big Pixel builds world-class custom software and amazing apps. Our team of pros puts passion into every one of our projects. Our design-infused development leans heavily on delivering a great experience for our clients and their clients. From startups to enterprises, we can help craft your ideas into real-world products that help your business do better business.
So you've been doing this on your own for a short while, and you're kind of in what we assume is what we call the slog, which is you're not quite big enough to have people coming to you yet. You still have to try to sell you or your product to other people. Do you have within that 18 months a story of a really good accomplishment that really motivated you, and then also maybe one not so good situation that kind of made you second guess being on your own?
Yeah, I do. I have one for each. I'll start with the one that made me second guess. So
Okay.
when I went out on my own, it had always been a plan to go out on my own at some point in time. I think I said this at the top, right? When I started my business, I just didn't think I was going to start then. So I was starting from zero. The plan was always to start it as a small side gig, see what was going on, start to scale it up, and then go. I had a feeling that where I was at before, I was not going to be at for an extended period of time. It was just a matter of when was it going to be time for either myself to move on or for us to say, hey, like where we're at in the business, it doesn't really make sense for the fit. And that was part of the journey for the startup that I had joined. And I was anticipating that. I didn't anticipate it to happen when it did. So when it did, I said, okay, let's go do it. And my wife and I talked about it and we said, okay, let's give ourselves, we think this much time is reasonable to get up and going. And this is what our target should be. We need to have at least X amount of revenue by the time we get to the end of the year. And at that point in time, it would have been about like 7 months. So I gave myself 7 months to say, hey, let's get proof of this can work. I need some startup. It was 6 months and 3 weeks in and still had nothing on the table, right? So then the conversation was, okay, I've put in a lot of effort, I've put in a lot of time. I have felt very positive about a lot of conversations and nothing has closed and nothing has come to fruition. Why am I doing this? I don't think this isn't fun, but I also don't get to do a lot of the other fun things I used to because I'm not spending a lot of cash, but I'm also not bringing any cash. So
And
for me,
all your time is now
correct,
wrapped up in this.
it was opportunity cost that I missed out on. I was okay knowing that nothing was going to come in at this point in time, but at some point in time, I also was not generating anything like I would have marketed to. And I had this moment and I sat down with it was like just after New Year's and I was like, okay, what's the plan? What are you doing? When are you going to start applying to jobs again? And I said, I have this idea that if I make this transition in how I focus who I talk to and how I focus my messaging, I think I will get better opportunity. I just need the entrepreneur. I just need 4 more weeks and I just need one person to say yes and I'm going to be fine. And I got the 4 weeks. And in that moment, I told myself I was being too strict on what I listened to too many people on LinkedIn. I said, this is what I think my value is. And I'm not deviating from it. Priced me out of every single opportunity that I had. No wonder I was getting ghosted on a lot of stuff, like looking back on it now. But I also was going to be more open to be more flexible actually on what opportunities I was open to. And so I had avoided contract opportunities. I had avoided opportunities that were very small because I thought that my differentiator was it's partnership focused and I want to come in, make a difference for you and leave. And I want it to be super important. And that was something that was a barrier for myself that held me back very early on when I just needed to get traction. And when I told myself like, hey, I'm going to be open to more stuff, the floodgates opened to an extent, right? I found an opportunity that was a little bit outside of what my core scope was going to be. It was a contract role for somebody who was going out on maternity leave. Or like, I need someone who's not looking for another job because I know this guy's coming back. I just need somebody reliable for 12 weeks to do the job, keep the lights on. If you can move it forward, great. And I said, fine. How many hours a week do you need? We need 30 hours a week. Perfect. That's great. It gives me 10 hours to keep trying to find something else. And I had a bunch of these small opportunities that I really loved and were the whole reason I had gone out on my own anyways, to help people like that and do things that I wasn't willing to take because I would have had to have done like 60 of them a month for it to make sense because they were really early in their journey or only needed some of that advisory work. And we're like, I really only need you for 2 hours a week, maybe 10 hours a month total. And it just wasn't going to make sense. And once I gave up on that, because I had listened to too many people on LinkedIn and social media before, it's okay. Now I've gotten back in the rhythm. And now I'm getting opportunities that are coming through. And now I am saying no to stuff because I filled my time and I'm less stressed and I'm less desperate. And so I think it's two sides of it, right? Like a win and it's barrier where it's, I had this moment of the wall where I was like, hey, I gave it a go. But this was not meant to be for me. Maybe I'll try it again in the future. I know things now, but I got to go back to making the money. And all it took was a little bit of flexibility from my side to say, no, the goal going out on my own was to be able to work on what I wanted to work on, make an impact, have some flexibility, be more present for my daughter and my family. And these are achieving it. It's not the way I thought I was going to, but this is achieving it. And I'm actually getting closer by doing these things to what I wanted to do than I was by holding on hope that I could do it in some specific way. And that was like a massive unlock for me. And maybe there's still a chance that, David, you talked about it earlier, right? You have to go out and find it and kill it and bring it back and cook it and eat it and also figure out how you're doing it again the next day. And at some point, maybe I go out and I don't find anything, right? And a contract ends and it's not there and I don't have the next opportunity. And I say, hey, you know what? It's time to move this to the side again and keep building and keep working, but I need something sustainable there. And then I come back, or maybe that's the point where I go all in on, hey, let's bring somebody else in that can put some time towards it also. And by them putting time towards it also, in whatever capacity it may be, we're able to bring in more. And so net, I'm actually better off and we're going to grow it faster. And we'll see what happens.
That's like the classic pivot. Yeah.
That's entrepreneurship in a nutshell. And I think it's really refreshing to hear that. I think a couple of points there. The best advice I got is make sure you carve out every day for sales. And that's so easy when you have one big client or you've got work to do. So easy to forget that. And some people will go even a step further and say, wake up every morning and spend 2 hours on sales and then don't think about it again. And then do it again and do it again. And over time, that 10 hours a week or whatever will bear fruit. But it's so easy to get lost in that. And the other thing is, I think you bring up a good point about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is great, but I find it's mainly the people who post a ton are one of two people. And we do LinkedIn. I certainly don't have a problem with it. We're very busy on it as a company, but not mainly, one big group of people are unemployed. I've found like people I know over the years, and I've known them say 10 years, and you can tell when they've gotten laid off or something, because suddenly they're just
Active.
They're active on it and they're like philosophical.
Yeah, they're experts.
This is how you're going to change X industry. And I'm here just meet people and we're going to get together. We're going to hug and it's going to be great. And okay, that's one step. And then you've got the other extreme, I should say, are like the Gary V's of the world, who they make their presence known. They're a brand and they're everywhere. And then they've got their followers reposting their junk, whatever. And it's really easy to get lost in there when you need real advice or see really how to do something. Neither of them, because Gary V has already made it. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have good advice. I like a lot of his stuff, but it's different. It's not what you need right when you get started, right? And the dude who's just waxing poetic, hoping to God someone will listen and might reach out for a job opportunity. And what's funny, and it's not legit, because they always come out so earnest. And I'm not making fun of these guys at all. They come out so earnest. I'm here, and I'm here to be community, And then it's fake because when they get that job, they vanish. No community anymore. It was just a lever you were yanking. And that bothers me a little bit because we push articles all the time. I think we post like 180 times a month. It is nuts how much our team pushes. And that is to create somewhat of community, to create some sort of audience. And so if you're going to do that, do it. But anyway, I'm off on a
No,
And
but
just
I
as a
think that's important.
disclaimer, the Gary V David was referring to is not me. It's a different Gary V.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's fair.
okay,
Yeah, no one
cool.
would actually want to listen to what you have to say, Gary.
Yeah, I wasn't following part of it. I've enjoyed the conversation to this.
I get confused a lot with that guy, but he's a clown. I was Gary V
I am
first.
sure lots of people confuse you with a multi-gazillionaire marketing genius. Okay, sure.
It happens.
But I'm
Yeah,
glad
with
you.
pencils and crayons versus Gary. Yeah.
Just to kind of wrap everything up in the 18 months that you've had with this experience so far, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for any new business or entrepreneur?
There's no good or bad time to start. You're going to make mistakes. If you think you're 100% ready and have 100% product, I think you're going to knock it out of the park. If you're like, why the heck am I doing this? And there's going to be days that you feel every end of the spectrum in an hour. But if you're going to do it, go do it. That was one of the things that I struggled with very early on. It's like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then it's like, why am I doing this? And just keep going and it will compound and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to learn. But like, fewer people are paying attention to every single detail and every single step you take than you think, right? Everyone's the star of their own show. Not everyone's watching everyone else's show. So just go do it, right? And you're either going to knock it out of the park and chances are half the people will know and half the people won't, or you're going to fail utterly and far fewer people are going to know about that than not, and you're going to be better for them. So there's a chance that I flame out in the next 3 months and I'm probably just going to go do something else and I'm going to be better at whatever I do next for it, or I'm going to be super successful and it's going to be because I just went. So just get out there and do it. I think number one. I think the second thing is that while we all want to think what we're bringing out there is super unique, right? There's at least 10 to 15 other people that are doing probably very similar, if not the exact same thing that you're out there trying to do. And that's good, right? 'Cause that's going to cause everyone to be better at what they're doing. But there's also no one template for how you do it. And kind of comes back to what we were talking about with everybody that's there on LinkedIn. There's going to be somebody that's doing exactly what you are doing. You are modeling it after. That's going to say, wake up at 4:30, go do a cold plunge, run 3 miles, be extremely disciplined in your diet, X, Y, and Z, and you'll make X million dollars a year. And for every one of those, there's also somebody who has in your industry doing exactly what you're doing that has had the exact same result, maybe even a better result that you have never heard of, that wakes up at like 10 a.m. and just figures it out because that's what works for them. So know who you are, know what you're not good, and then embrace it, because authenticity is what's going to get you further than anything else. Like you talked about Gary Vee earlier, Dave, right? Gary Vee resonates because whether you like him or not, he's authentic. And you know that's what's going to, right? It may be a gimmick, but it's authentically a gimmick all the time. And so the only people that if it's a gimmick, the only people that know are the people that see him in his lowest moments behind closed doors. So know who you are and just be it. Right? I can be a great voice out there, but I also know that comic relief is something that I'm there for. So if someone's looking for a fulfillment expert, it's going to show up in a suit and be very buttoned up. I'm not that person, right? I'm going to be there. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. We're going to figure out what's going on. I'm going to talk to the CEO the same way I'm going to talk to the person that's back in the box or figure out what the problem is. We're going to laugh about it, talk for some minutes or whatever, and then we're going to go. I'm going to poke fun of myself. I'm going to poke fun of the person that's like the cold plunge, whatever the case may be, but it's got to be light. And I know that's my ethos and who I am. So that's what I'm going to do. And that's helped me more than it's hurt. And so I think that's the big thing. Look at other people, see what they're doing, take what you think works and is good for you, and leave behind. There are very few 100% unique ideas and unique people that are out there. Everyone's borrowed a little something from someone else along the line. And then the last one, I think I've been very verbose the whole time, but this one's pretty concise. Like, focus but iterate. You have to stay committed to your decision. Right? My decision was to go out on my own and do it. You and I talked on the first day. It would sound a lot different than it does right now, but the core of what I'm doing is the same. I want to help small brands. I want to help fulfillment providers. I want to help small businesses that are trying to make their dreams and achieve what they want to do be better through the experience that I've had. Early on, it looked one way. Beginning of this conversation looked one way. It may look different after I go back and listen, and think about what we've talked about and make some more changes as well. But be focused on what your decision is, but be flexible on how you're getting there. Because you're going to learn along the way and stuff's going to come up that you weren't expecting. And you got to be able to be willing to change your path, but keep your same destiny. That's the biggest thing. That's where people missed and where I almost.
You brought up going through every emotion within an hour, and that's something that comes up quite frequently on this podcast when we're talking to other business owners and entrepreneurs. And that is wholeheartedly true. David mentions it all the time too. So yeah, that resonates. Now, Joe, if anybody wants to learn more about you or your business, what's the best place to reach out to you besides LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn. I post once a day. It is true, but that's the best place to find me just because it's the easiest.
Okay.
Email works also. joe@1248.co.
Love it, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Christy Pronto, Content Marketing Director here at Big Pixel. Thank you for listening to this episode of the BizDev Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email, hello@thebigpixel.net. The BizDev Podcast is produced and presented by Big Pixel. See you next week. Until then, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and LinkedIn.